Nothing will make your long-term price predictions feel quite so wrong as watching the charts in the middle of a price spike. At this rate, we're going to hit our 2025 predictions this time tomorrow. Okay, so at the end of 2023, I guessed that we would see gold close the year ahead just above $2,600. I said I could see cases for $2,750 being likely. Those were predictions made by a few analysts, but I said there'd be too many variables to even call any of that a prediction. Just over $2,600 though, that was my number for the record. No prize for actually getting it right. That and $3 will get you on the train, but it did turn out to be pretty accurate. The close for gold ended the year at $2,606. Now, if that seems like some kind of weird brag, well, first of all, the offhand guesses are always the easy part. My year-end guesses have been within $5 3 years running. Now, I better tell you, though, what I got wrong. Nearing the end of 2023, I thought that we would have a slow Q1 and Q2 2024. I figured the rally wouldn't kick off until we got those rate cuts. That would be Q3. And prior to seeing the rally really kick off in December, I'd actually told a friend that I thought the first 2 quarters of 2024 would be pretty slow. Now, we all know what actually happened. That wasn't the case at all. The price moved on the hopes of rate cuts long before they actually hit. So it moved on the news, the sentiment, the feelings, whatever you want to call it. And if that just over $2,600 was the last I talked about gold price, well, it would have seemed conservative for most of the year. Well, this year the guess is a run to $3,000 gold. That makes perfect sense to me, with the catalyst being extended inflation, some trade wars, some saber rattling, and probably some continued central bank buying. Now, I would have guessed those would be slow catalysts playing out through the year, and again, I would have been wrong. We're seeing gold price rally right out of the gates. We're seeing new all-time highs above $2,850, and just going from intraday right now, it just hit $2,875. This really all got started on expectations of things like the tariff announcements rather than actual events like the tariffs actually taking effect. Now, before we get too much further, let me flash some gold from channel sponsor Summit Metals. If you're looking for gold or silver, they're great people with great prices, and I'm not just saying that. They can prove it. Just hit them up at summitmetals.com. So where are we at right now? $3,000 would be a 15% increase over the 2025 starting price for gold. So if we were working off intraday highs, well, gold is already up 10% this year, 5% more, and we've hit $3,000. Now, the run didn't start on the tariff announcements, but that gave it a lot of steam, and I'm guessing a few people out there grabbed a Canadian maple leaf ahead of the 25% tariff threat. Well, that threat has at least temporarily been resolved, and the price is still running. So if we look at it based on where the price is right now, well, it's almost silly to think that we won't see $3,000 in 2025. You need to consider, though, the context here. Gold ran up 27% in US dollars in 2024. It ran up 37% in Australian dollars, something like 38% in Canadian dollars. Now, those are huge gains. So if you're now looking at a 15% gain to get to $3,000 and saying that's nothing, well, it is something. We need to remind ourselves that extended runs like this in the year that we're coming off of are not typical. Not typical to the point that a lot of us have probably changed up how we're buying, and a lot of us probably aren't seeing those corrections we always like to see. So this is really where you have to start using the word supercycle. Analysts already are. And in that case, $3,000 really isn't a big deal in the long term. Now, supercycle, that's not a word that I would really just throw around, except if you look at the case where gold is doing this well when it has so many things working against it, you kind of have to allow the idea. Quick examples of factors working against gold, factors that would normally push the price down, are things like the relative strength of the US dollar. It's up 5% on the Dixie in the past 3 months, and that's not a small thing at all. And the expectation for rate cuts dropping from 4 to 2, that would normally freak out investors that have been high on this rate cut story. And then if you look at the Western investing in gold ETFs, you see outflows, not inflows in 2024. And the Western investors, they mostly sat out of that 27% rally. So all of these stories really should be negative for gold, but here we are. So the feeling of being right about a 12-month price prediction but wrong about wild spikes in between is a new one, and it's happening again right now. So a $3,000 price point, it's the number that everyone keeps throwing out. It definitely wouldn't surprise me one bit, but a 10% price jump in 35 days, I think is more like 11% now. That's pretty wild. And then you have the GDX and the GDXJ taking off too. So now the producers are getting in on the run. Those are the minor and the junior minor ETFs. Well, they're outperforming gold spot price. So if you take higher prices, higher physical demand, and higher producer investing, well, you're looking at demand coming from all sides. And one reason that that's interesting is a lot of the demand for gold has come from Eastern countries. I mentioned earlier that Western investors have mostly been sitting it out. Well, this all goes back to what I mentioned earlier about spot price taking off with pretty clear headwinds. Now, the bottom line is that we're seeing new all-time highs in gold price and big all-time highs. And we're getting there without a lot of the positive catalysts that we could still see ahead. Now, we've heard about a supercycle for years now, and it looks like it's checking out. And I've seen people say we're just getting started, and actually I disagree with that part because a 27% annual gain year over year, 113% gain since 2019, means we already started. So we aren't just starting a supercycle, but maybe it's fair to say we're in one. So let us know what you think, whether you thought we'd see the gold rally take off again so soon, whether you think we're just getting started, or at least maybe somewhere in the middle of a supercycle. And then let us know what you expect for gold price in 2025. We're all out here to give our expert opinions. And I figure if we all make a guess, at least one of us will be right. So let us know. And while you're in the comments, be sure to hit that like button if you found any of this interesting. Be sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on if you want to hear more on the topic. And if you're still here, thanks again for watching. I always appreciate your time. Take care.